This is not a finance channel, but I wanted to make a financial type video. And the reason why I want to do that is because I very often see people give really terrible financial advice online. I see terrible financial blogs, and I see the most terrible financial books. And over the years, as someone who's kind of gone from basically making like no money, like when I first graduated from college, I got kicked out twice. And after I graduated, I was making about $8,000 a year in the wealthiest county in the entire country to where I am now, which is very comfortable, like very, very comfortable, very well off in the grand scheme of things, I would say, and not stressed at all. Getting from that point to where I am now was certainly no easy task. And I think that a lot of the standard financial advice out there is just complete garbage. And I'll probably do multiple videos in the future, kind of getting deep into the nuances of different financial advices, the worst pieces of financial advice that I've heard, some of the best pieces of financial advice I've heard, some of the things that I've learned personally. But I'm going to say this right now. If anything you've heard consistently is probably not true. Does that make sense? I'll give you one off the top of my head. Most millionaires are created through real estate. It's not true. If you actually research on where that phrase came from, you understand that it's not true. You understand why it's not true. And if you actually apply the concepts, like if you actually think about the financials of real estate and how wealth is accumulated through real estate, depending on your definition of wealth, you'll be able to easily see why that statement is not true. So there's a lot of different books, there's a lot of different blogs, videos, stuff like that, that give terrible advice like that. I want to just make this video saying how you should just avoid all of them. Avoid pretty much every financial book you come across. And the reason why I say this, there's a few books on finance and business. I'm going to lump business into that too, because a lot of business books I've read are just fluff. They're not that good. They don't give much valuable insight. The reason why I feel like I am someone who can make this video, like I already mentioned, I went from having like no money at all to doing pretty well now. But I think the more important reason is because I read most of these books. I've been reading these books for the past 10 years, 10 plus years. I have a few right now, just to show you that I'm not full of crap. I do actually read a bunch of these books that people recommend. I read unpopular ones and I read very popular ones. This is a Money Master Game. I got this used, so there's no like cover on this, but I do want to show you just what this book is. Dave Ramsey, read his books, listen to his advice. Tim Ferriss, this is a business book more than a finance book, but like I said, I lumped them in the same category. Read that multiple times, by the way. Ramit Sethi. Actually, I do like Ramit Sethi. I think he gives good advice. But like I said, I'm just showing you different books that I've read. This is like a small portion of all the books I've read over the past 10 years. This book I will certainly talk about in the very near future. This is The Millionaire Next Door. I think this is one of the worst financial books ever written. I think most of the advice that it gives is horrible financial advice. I think the premise is terrible. I think the conclusion is terrible. I think the data and the way they did their research is terrible. This is actually the book that inspired me to make this video, which is basically pretty much, this whole video is basically just a rant, warning you to not read books like this. Essentially, the reason is because a lot of these books, they don't actually offer you perspectives from someone who's trying to increase their income. Over the past like decades, you hear lots of things when people talk about like different financial gurus and people who give financial advice will tell you that you are spending it properly. I know some of the conventional advice that I heard a lot when I had no money was don't buy coffee, don't eat out. Those things are detrimental. To which I say, that's rubbish. That's stupid. Yes, if you buy like 20 coffees per day, 7 days a week for an entire month, yeah, you're going to be broke doing that for the most part if you don't already have a lot of money. But a coffee a day isn't going to make you bankrupt. Let's be real. Let's say you go to Starbucks, you buy a $5 cup of coffee. I think it's not even that much, but let's say it's $5. 7 days a week. What's that? $35 per week. Multiply that by 4. What is that? $140 a month. You're not going to go broke from $140 a month. You could. Does it hurt to cut it out? Do you need coffee? Maybe, maybe not. Depends. Depends on what your lifestyle is, depending on what you might need it for. But my point is like cutting out coffee isn't going to change your life that much. But this is some of the advice that people give. And the reason why they give such, I guess, simplistic advice is because, in my personal opinion, a lot of these financial guys, they're just marketing to you. They're marketing a product or they're marketing a service, and they want you to believe that if you just do the simplest thing possible, you will achieve massive success like they have. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that the success they have is built off of them making you feel insecure about where you are in life. Not understanding exactly how money is accumulated or not understanding how wealth is created. And they capitalize off that. Some more books. This is a book that you will never hear anyone like ever recommend because it's a very obscure book, but it's a book I read like 8 years ago, Investing Profits on Wall Street. It's a good book. It's decent. But yeah, I'm bringing these up to show you that like some people will read like a financial book. Some people will read like the most basic financial books. Like you've seen the book, I think it's just called Money. It kind of has like a white cover. I forget the exact book, The Rules of Money, something like that. Super popular book. It's decent. It's not fantastic. It's decent. A lot of books that are bestsellers, they're bestsellers not because the content of the books are fantastic. They're bestsellers because people push the book so much and they make you believe that it's a book worth buying. It's a lot of marketing. It's a lot of hype. Sometimes if it's a rich author or if the author is surrounded by a bunch of people in a circle who are also wealthy, they can collaborate and they can push the books up in sales to make it seem like it's a bestseller, despite no one having really bought it yet in like the actual public. It's just the person who's rich buying a lot of his own books and giving them away for free. And it says, oh, it's a bestseller because he sold 25,000 copies in the first month. He bought 25,000 copies in the first month to give away to help him make more sales down the line. It's an investment in himself or herself. It's smart, don't get me wrong, but it's misleading. And I don't just read like books that people just recommend. I also read textbooks on finance. I've read books on finance. I've read books on economics. I've read books on credit. I've read books on REITs, real estate, you name it. I've probably read a book about it. Stocks. I don't even like stocks that much. I've read books on stock investing. I've read books on stock trading. You name it, I've probably read at least some version of it or some variant of it. So I'm just bringing this all up to show that I'm not like full of shit when I say I hate financial books. I've read a lot of them, a lot of the most financial ones, probably all of the most financial ones, and only probably like a small handful are actually worth reading. Now, I don't want this to just be a rant. I do want to kind of give my 2 cents on the idea of finance and what I think is some of the major issues. This is not scripted, so if you think I'm all over the place, this is why. This is just kind of me like spitting things off the top of my head. One of the biggest problems that I've seen when it comes to finances is not so much that people spend too much money. That can be a factor. But one of the biggest issues that I've personally found is that people just don't make that much money. That was my problem back in the day. I share the story a lot. I have like a 7-day, this is not a pitch or anything I'm selling. I'm not selling this. It's free. It's on YouTube. You don't have to even sign up. It's on YouTube in a playlist. It's called the No Fluff Guide to Finances. Basically, I ranted about this years ago and I hated it back then. I still hate it now. So I want to make I don't know if it's 7 days, but it's a few videos and like a course, just a playlist. And it pretty much walks you through what I would consider a more practical approach to finances and to money. Like I said, a lot of times people give you the fluff. They don't give you like the actual tactics you can use. That video series was more of me giving like a practical, tactical guide. But before I get too off topic, so yeah, money to me, people just don't have a lot of it, and that's where people go wrong. I usually recommend to people, you should always be trying to make more money, no matter what. You should always be trying to make more money. The reason for this is because inflation. That's like the simplest way I can put it. Inflation exists. Inflation will kill the dollar. If you're not always making more money, you're pretty much always losing money. Now, when it comes to you like making more money, some of the conventional advice I see online a lot is like, you need to start a business. You need to start a side hustle. You need to do all this. I think most of that advice is terrible. I'm going to be real with you. You being an entrepreneur, I'll start with entrepreneurship because I'm an entrepreneur. You being an entrepreneur isn't all that great. It doesn't make you better. And the idea that you're going to have like this passive income or the idea that you're going to have like this super luxurious lifestyle where you have all this time freedom is just garbage. It doesn't exist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It does exist for some people. For most people, it does not exist. And the long-term outcome that you want can still be achieved with a job. Does that make sense? I bring this up because when I was younger, I heard this advice a lot. People said like, you can only have time freedom if you have a job, or if you can only have time freedom if you start a business. This can be true if you start the right business at the right time for a long enough time for it to all work out. Does that make sense? You need all three of those things to be true at the exact same time. Otherwise, you starting a business will not make you like financially, or I should say like time free. You can have a job and the job could still pay you a good amount and you could have a lot of flexibility at your job and still be technically time free. They both work. But if you read a lot of these finance books, they will convince you that only one works and they'll say that only entrepreneurship works. And really what they're trying to do is when they say that only entrepreneurship works or they try to make it seem like there's only one thing that works, they're trying to sell you the belief that they have the secrets to your success. And it's shit. It's not true. There are multiple ways to do the same thing. Like you can do 2 plus 2 to equal 4, or you can do 1 plus 3 to still get 4, or you can do 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 to equal 4, or you can do 4 times 1 to equal 4. Hopefully this point I'm making makes sense. Like there's lots of ways for you to get to the exact same outcome. I know that was like a mathematical type example, but I'm just trying to like make you understand that concept. Lots of ways to get to the exact same outcome. So you don't have to chase entrepreneurship. Passive income, it doesn't exist. For the most part, it really doesn't exist. In my personal experience, the only time you can really get true passive income, for the most part, like the way people describe passive income, is if you're the owner of like some big company. And it needs to be like a really big company. Like you have to have a lot of shares in a very big company to the point where you're not even like making any decisions. You're just kind of like collecting paychecks because maybe you're an advisor every once in a while. You have a lot of shares in the company. Otherwise, the idea of passive income is pretty much non-existent for most people. I'm a real estate agent or technically a consultant. People say you get passive income through real estate. No, you don't. You get money that comes in at certain times. That's true. But you also get money that comes in at certain times from paycheck. Where's the passive part? Oh, it's passive because I don't have to work that much. Have you ever seen a real estate investor? They work. They work. Finding new tenants. That's work. If the tenant doesn't do what they're supposed to do and they break a lease and you have to like evict them or take them to court, that's work. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of headache. It's a lot of struggle. It's a lot of stress. If you're a brand new real estate investor, or even if you're not a brand new real estate investor, you got to maintain the property. That's work. You got to buy stuff for the property. That's work. You got to fix stuff at the property. That's work. And if you're not fixing it, you're hiring other people to fix it. That's work. So the idea of passive income in most senses does not exist. You're always going to be doing some work in exchange for cash. It's up to you to figure out like what matters the most. But the way you do it, again, it's subjective to you. It's what you want. But what matters is that you're just doing it. You need to be increasing your income. Like I said, that's the number one issue that I've seen with most people. Most people just don't have a high enough income to survive. I say this because a lot of books I read on finance, and people used to fight me about this a lot. When I first got into like reading these finance books, and I was really trying to get into personal development, and when I was at a really low point in my life, a lot of the advice was you should invest in the stock market in some way, shape, or form. Some people suggested you need to do the S&P 500. Some people suggested you need to invest in a self-directed IRA. Some people heavily suggested you should like max out your 401k, get the company match. These things are all fine, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do these things. You certainly do these things when you make enough money. And that's the key thing. When you make enough money. I made this mistake, and I know plenty of people who made this mistake and still make this mistake to this day. They make like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And they're like, oh, I got to save my money so that way I can invest in a Roth IRA, or I can invest it in matching my 401k, or so I can put it in the S&P 500. It's like, dude, you don't have any money. You can't afford to do this. Don't worry about investing. Worry about making. Make more money first, and then when you have an excess of money to invest, then you invest. When I made that No Fluff Finance course, I think in that course, I said, unless you're making about 60 or 70K, the idea of investing should not cross your mind. I still find that true to this day. I actually think that same amount might still be true to this day. Maybe a little bit higher, depending on where you live. Maybe a little bit lower, depending on where you live. But unless you're making a substantial amount of money, like a relatively substantial amount of money where all of your essential needs are taken care of and you have excess left over and you're not like worried about like some disaster happening, do not invest. And the reason why I say this, I think is purely mathematical. 0 times 0 is still 0. Does that make sense? Like if you invest too little, obviously if you invest a little bit, it's not 0. But the point that I'm making is that people will cite like compound interest. I've heard that so many times. But dude, didn't you hear that Einstein said that compound interest is the the wonder of the world. Didn't you hear Warren Buffett say that compound interest is what made him a billionaire? If you compound a number that's too small over too long of a time frame, it doesn't mean anything at all. Take $1, do the math, literally do it right now. Take $1, compound it. So like after a whole year, add 8% to it, add 50% to it. Do that 50 times. Let's assume each number is a year. So 50 times, let's say 50 years. Give me a number, let's see what you get. I'll do it right now. Actually, what I'll do is I'll use ChatGPT because it's a little bit faster than me calculating it myself. Hey, ChatGPT, if I were to take $1 at, let's say, a 20% interest rate every single year, let's maintain that over, let's compound that over 50 years, how much money would I have? So according to ChatGPT, if you invested $1 at a 20% annual interest rate compounded yearly for 50 years, you'd end up with approximately $9,100.44. Now, the reason why I shared this is because, actually, one more thing. Can you divide $9,100.44 by 50? Okay, so because I want to make sure like how much you're actually getting per year. With this amount compounded, you'll get about $182.01 per year on average. Now, people are going to say, well, that's a very low number you're using. That's a low number. In real life, I wouldn't be using a low number. I'm just making a point. I'm just kind of sharing a concept. My point is, if the number is too small and you try to compound it, use this compound interest, it really doesn't make a difference because it's compounding too slow to actually matter in your life. If I were to give you $9,000 after 50 years, it would not mean much to you. And like I mentioned in the beginning, the reason is because of inflation. $9,000 today is decent. If you got it like right now, all at once, it's decent. It's not life-changing. It's decent. $9,000 in 50 years is not going to be anything at all. It's probably going to be like the equivalent of like $2,000. Now imagine in 50 years I gave you $2,000 and said, oh yeah, you've earned this after 50 years of living. Would that be a good deal to you? No, it'd be a terrible deal. I hope you're saying no right now. So that's the point I want to make, that a lot of people, when they don't have that much money, they try to compound what little they have, and they're hoping that like if I put money in now and just let it compound, it'll grow and I can retire when I'm like 50 or 60 or 70. You will not. I just did the math. You will not. So don't bother. What you should be doing is putting in a lot more effort and a lot more time into just increasing your overall income. And then once you have a certain amount of income, then you can take $100 and invest it like every week. Because that's really how true compound interest works, is when the pool is high. So $100 a week or $500 a week, $1,000 a week will compound much faster. So you'll be able to get like the true benefits of compound interest quicker, which is what you want, I would imagine. But in the early phases, stop worrying about that. Every finance book says you shouldn't, and they say you should like just worry about investing in Roth IRAs or S&P 500. Rubbish. Stop doing it. Worry about getting your income up first. So now the question becomes, how do you get your income up? And every single financial guru, every single financial book, every single financial course I've taken, they never seem to get deep into the actual meat and potatoes of how do you actually increase your income. In my personal opinion, it's not that complicated. It's difficult to do, but not that difficult to understand. This is what I would recommend. This is the very first thing. Step 1, if you don't have a job, get a job. Step 2, increase your income at the job that you have. And that, for most people, I would say for 80% of people, that is probably the only thing I would suggest for you. Increase your income at the job that you have. If this means you work extra hours, do it. If this means that you try to become more valuable to the owner or to your manager or your supervisor so they give you a pay increase, do it. Whatever you can do to make more money at that job, if it means simply just asking for a raise because you just didn't ask for a raise, do it. That's the first step. Find a way to increase your income at the job that you currently have, assuming you have a job. Now, if you do that and you find that the income you have still isn't like meeting your standards, second suggestion, change jobs. What do you mean change jobs? Find a different job while you have a job, so that way you don't have to like really scrounge around if you lose your current job. Like, you don't want to be in a position where you lose your current job and then you're struggling and you have to like rush and you take whatever offer thrown at you. You want to be able to negotiate and have some wiggle room on the table. So what you do is, while you have a job, if the income that your current job provider is giving you isn't that much, find another job that's similar and say, hey, at the company I'm working for right now, and I am still working at that company right now, I make $20 an hour. I have this skill, I have this skill, I have this skill, and I have this skill. Can you give me 25? They might say no. If they say no, cool. You didn't lose anything. You still got a job. If they say yes, cool. You have an offer for more money. What can you do with that offer? You can go back to the original employer. Hey, boss, I've been working in this company for 5 years. I've been highly considering leaving. In fact, I just did a job interview. They offered me $25. They told me I can sign like today and we can start like next week at that new company. I love it here. This is a fantastic job. I'm having a great time here. I think I'm valuable to the team. I enjoy the relationships I'm having with everyone else. Could I get a pay increase to $27? They might say yes. If they say yes, cool. Even easier for you. You got a nice pay increase and you didn't have to move and you still have your job. Perfect. If they say no, cool. You still get a pay increase because you got to go to a different job that offered you more money. Does that make sense? So that'd be the second step. Now, some people might sit there and say, well, what if I don't have any skills? Get some skills. Get skills. Use your free time after you leave your current job to get skills. And I think this is the part that screws most people up. And I was guilty of this myself. What a lot of people do is they scrounge and they figure, I need more money. So instead of me getting more skills to be more valuable at the one job that I have, or being able to go to a different yet similar job, I'll work 2 jobs, or I'll work 3 jobs, or I'll work 4 jobs, or I'll do 2 jobs and like a side hustle, or I'll do 2 jobs, a side hustle, and a side business. No. You do one job, you use the rest of your hours to get a skill. And you need to do research to figure out what the skill you want to learn is, and if it's valuable. It needs to be valuable. And it needs to be something that you would consider valuable for a sustainable period of time. Now, if you want some suggestions, I'll actually recommend a book. This book is actually probably one of the few business books that I actually thought was good. Like, it's written very well. You can binge read it. It's somewhat thick. It's not like the thickest book, but somewhat thick. I binge read it. I thought it was fantastic. The advice was actually like solid. It was objective things with like actual like suggestions. In this book, MJ DeMarco says that when he was trying to increase his income, he had a job. I think he was doing like limousine driving, or he was like a chauffeur or taxi driver or something like that. And he built websites for people. They weren't the best websites, but it was a skill that was somewhat rare, and he knew it'd be around for a long time, and it still is. People nowadays still need websites, and he just built websites for people because a lot of people don't know how to build websites. That's an example, and that's something you could probably still do to this day. I still do this occasionally from time to time. I know how to build websites. People reach out to me. I don't advertise it because it's not a real side hustle. Like, if you offer to me to build a website, I'll maybe do it. Maybe if I have the time to do it, I'll do it. Assuming you pay enough and it seems worth my time, I'll do it. But people reach out to me for it. I don't advertise that I build websites. I don't need to. It's extra income. Does that make sense? Find something like that. Something that you can do in your free time that needs to be something you can do in your free time. It needs to be something that doesn't require a ton of time on your part. Some time is fine, but it can't take a ton of time. And it needs to be something that will get you like an actual return on the time you're investing into it. You need to have all 3 of those things met. So if you're doing like something random, and this is the reason why I don't like side hustles, is because the problem with the side hustle is, one, you don't control it. If you do DoorDash or if you do Uber, you do not control if they decide to charge more for their service fees and take more money out of your pocket, which is what they do. They increase their fees that they make mandatory at the cost of their drivers. Because let's be real, if last week for DoorDash, if I paid $20 and I tipped you $5, and all of a sudden they increase their service fees so that way I'm paying $40 for the exact same meal, I'm tipping you less. People will get mad. People will say it's unfair. This is how it is. They increase the amount of money they're charging, so the customers are going to decrease the amount they're tipping you to save money for the exact same product or the exact same service. This is how it works. I'm not saying this is how it should work. I'm just saying how it does work. So you can't rely on that because you're at the mercy of DoorDash or Uber or whatever these side hustles are for maintaining your standard of work. And like I said, you can't control it. So it's not like you can go to DoorDash or Uber and request more money. It's tips. Like, they do tips. You can't get more money. And to be honest, the downside is you can't even perform better. Like, there's not really much way to drive better to give someone their food. It's very low quality skill. You're easily replaceable. And the more easily replaceable you are, the less people will offer you. So I do not recommend like side hustles at all. I would avoid them if you can. I made that mistake myself when I was younger. I tried doing all these side hustles thinking that it can make like an extra income. it actually wastes more time than it helps you make money. It genuinely does. And I talk about like evaluating your time more in my Productivity Accelerator YouTube channel and in my Productivity Accelerator business. This is not a pitch, but if you want to learn more about that, you certainly can. But yeah, it wastes more time than it makes you money. So it's not worth it. You got to find something that's a skill that you can do relatively quickly, that you can actually make some substantial money in that time period, and that you have freedom to control. Website building, perfectly fine, because you can always scale website building. You can always scale website building. If you can make, say, for example, 5 websites a week or 5 websites even a month, say at $500 per website, that's $2,500 an entire month. That's an income. That's a full-time income for a lot of people. And if you add that on top of what you currently make, assuming you can do it after work, which you certainly can, I know from personal experience, it doesn't take that long to build a website. That's a substantial amount of money that you can be making. And you can always leave your original job to make more websites. So there's flexibility there. You have control over your income at that point. And at some point, if you really get a lot of demand and you really build up a customer base, you can always just maybe build some websites by yourself or hire other people to build the websites for you, or do some kind of combination of both, where you're hiring people to maybe build the shell of the website, build the original version of the website, and then maybe at the end, once the website's built, you do the final touches, whatever. It's up to you. The point I'm making is that don't start side hustles if you're trying to increase your income, and you find that you can't get it from your primary job. Do not do side hustles. What you should be doing is finding a skill that can, I'm going to say it again, make you more money that's substantial, relatively substantial, doesn't require too much of your time, and something that you can do in addition, at least initially, to your current full-time job. Do not get 2 jobs. Do not get a side hustle. It is a waste of your time. It's a waste of your energy. That's a big thing. Energy is massive. People underestimate how much energy is like necessary to like function and to succeed. You waste your energy and time doing that. Avoid it. Once you do that, I would say at that point, you have a lot more control to increase your income. And at that point, you're, I would say, probably in the best case scenario. You've created essentially a business. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I'm all over the place with this, but I do want to bring this up. At this point, now that you have an extra income, you could invest if you really want to. If you have the extra money and if your life is taken care of, if you're living below your means, if your credit card bills are all taken care of, or for the most part taken care of, you're solid. When it comes to long-term stuff, I also disagree with most finance books, and I disagree with most finance people. A lot of people, and as a real estate agent, I'm going to be completely honest, they all say you need to invest in real estate. This is a lie, and I'm going to explain why it's a lie. Think about the top 10 wealthiest / richest people. I say slash because wealth is defined in many ways. Every way you can define wealth included. That's how bold I'm going to be with the statement. The top 10 people you know who are rich and wealthy, not or, and. You can do or if you want to, it doesn't matter, just exact same effect. But rich and wealthy, give names. Do any of them get their money primarily from real estate? Now, when I say primarily, what I mean is that their income mostly comes from being a real estate investor. That means that they don't get the majority of their income from having a business. Even if the business involves real estate, that doesn't count. They don't get their money from another business, like, something that's not related to real estate. They didn't inherit it. You get the point that I'm making. Like, they have to get the majority of their primary income from real estate. So basically, they get rent payments. That's how they get most of their money. Name 10 people, the top 10 people. Do they do that? The answer is no. They don't do that. They don't do that. Elon Musk, business, SpaceX, Tesla, whatever. Donald Trump, if you want to name Donald Trump, I know he's probably not the top 10, but Donald Trump, he didn't technically get his money from real estate. He got his money from being a salesman and marketing himself as a brand, and he used the brand money to build a real estate portfolio. He also had money from his father, who was also a real estate investor, so it's not quite the same. But the point that I'm making is that it's not really real estate that made him wealthy. It's his brand that made him wealthy. Robert Kiyosaki, big advocate of real estate. Robert Kiyosaki did not make his millions from real estate. Robert Kiyosaki made his millions from having a brand in which he sold you the rich dad, poor dad mindset, lifestyle, ideal, quadrant, all of that stuff. It's a brand. He used a brand to sell himself. And by him selling a brand, he made extra money, which he then invested into real estate. some people will say, well, he made wealth through real estate because you talk about like net worth. I'm not doing net worth. The reason why I'm not doing net worth is because it's an arbitrary number that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Net worth is super subjective, first of all. And because it's so subjective and because it's almost like defined so loosely, it doesn't really mean anything. And I've done other videos about this, but real quick to explain why I think this. Your net worth is essentially to give a very simple definition, it's your assets minus your liabilities. Assets are fairly subjective. Some people say an asset is something that brings you money. An asset can be something that has the potential to bring you money as well. So sometimes you have a business. You might have a business that has made no money at all yet. You might pitch that business to an investor and say, hey, I expect this business to make X amount of money. Depending on the type of business, they might determine that it has X value multiplied by, say, 8 or multiplied by 6. That number, that total product, the number times 6 or the number times 8, the number times whatever, is how much they evaluate that business. And from that point, again, it's assets minus liabilities. Assume you have no liabilities at all and say you own 100% of this company. If they evaluate this company at, say, like 10 million, you are a millionaire. Do you have income? No. Do you have money in your bank? Potentially no. Do you have customers? Potentially no. You haven't done anything yet besides pitch an idea and got investors to buy into it. But because of the way that net worth is defined, and I'm being super general here, you're considered a millionaire or potentially a billionaire. Billionaire is a bit extreme, but you hopefully get the point that I'm trying to make. Because of this, I do not consider net worth to be a factor when it comes to determining like wealth. I don't think it's because it doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Net worths are arbitrary. You can go on Google and look up someone's net worth. It can be completely false. It doesn't mean anything. So I do not consider it. Which is why if you have a real estate portfolio and you say, oh, I have like X amount of houses and half the mortgage is paid off of like 10 of these houses and it equals $1 million, I would say to you, I don't consider you a millionaire because you don't have $1 million. You have an artificial number that people would consider $1 million. Does that make sense? Like a house technically is not worth what you pay for it, in my personal opinion. And I don't get super deep into it because that's like a real estate conversation on how houses are priced and how we use that model. That's a whole different video and that's a whole different tangent. But the point that I wanted to make is that by the time you get here, by the time you found some kind of like, not side hustle, but like a side business that does make you a substantial amount of income, or at least something that makes you relatively well off, I think at that point, you're solid. And at that point, what you should be doing if you really want wealth is doubling down on the business. The most wealthy people have big businesses. That's how they made their wealth, through business, not through real estate. It's through business. If you get to a point where you have so much money through your businesses and you want to spread yourself out, not put all eggs in one basket. I'm sure you may have heard people like Warren Buffett say that. A lot of investors use that exact same terminology, that exact same phrase. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. By the time you get to that point, you can invest in real estate. That's perfectly fine. But you can also invest in other businesses. Whatever you want to do depends on what you want to do. But that's kind of like my 2 cents. I don't want this video to be too long. The point that I'm making is that most of what people teach about finance is just complete garbage. It doesn't make much sense. You'll never see a finance book that goes through all that stuff. Maybe there's like some obscure finance book out there that might do it, but for the most part, no finance book gives like that much straightforward advice. And just to kind of reiterate, number one problem I see with people, the number one problem I see with people is that people don't have a spending issue. People have an income problem. People just don't have a good enough income to survive in the modern era and keep up with inflation, which if you don't understand inflation pretty much means that the power of the dollar decreases. Your spending power decreases over time. So make more money. How do you make more money? You get a job if you don't have a job. You ask for a raise at the current job you have, or you try to get a second job, not at the same time, like you get another job in place of your current job that will pay you more money. How do you get that second job? If you don't have skills right now, you get more skills. You figure out what skills work best. You market yourself to that employer to get those skills, or you market yourself to that employer, you get that job. While you're at your current job, also be trying to utilize your current skills or get more skills that you can advertise on your own after work to get an additional income, not a side hustle. Avoid DoorDash, avoid postmarks, avoid Uber, avoid all these like companies that provide you money through tipping. If you can't control it, don't involve yourself with it. It's a waste of your time, it's a waste of your energy, it's a waste of your effort. Focus on something that you can control, something that's a long-term tangible skill where you offer genuine value to a potential customer or client. Try to do it, by the way, I didn't mention this, but try to do it as cheaply as possible. If you have to invest a lot of money to get like a certification or something like that, I don't recommend it as much. I'm not saying it's not a good idea depending on what it is, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not the best investment. I had friends in the past who did like life insurance, and they were like, "Oh, I'll get this life insurance certification. It'll cost $100." That's fine. I mean, it's $100. It's not that big of a deal. If you don't use it, you're not gonna, go bankrupt from it. But I think the less you can invest, the better off you are. It's hard to go in the negatives when you invest in zero. Like, let's be real. If you didn't invest anything, you really only have profit. That's the way I see it. So try to do a skill that's as easy for you to do and is as cheap as possible for you to do. Hopefully that makes sense. Once you do that long enough and once you increase your income substantially enough, from that point on, you can choose to scale it or outsource the work to other people, which is still a version of scaling in the grand scheme of things, depending on what you want to do with that business. Remember that businesses make the majority of people wealthy, not real estate. And then once you do that long enough, then you can choose to invest in real estate or invest or go on vacation or do whatever you want to do because you have money at that point. So hopefully that makes sense. One more thing I want to bring up, because I know there's probably going to be at some point some real estate agents that either see this and they get mad, or they're going to be in my comments debating me. I'm going to say this. A lot of real estate agents will disagree and say, no, real estate builds true wealth. I mentioned earlier, you got to look at what someone's primary source of income is to determine if what they're saying is true or full of shit. Real estate agents have a business primarily. They do not use real estate. Real estate agents have a sole proprietorship in general, where they are a salesperson selling you the idea that you need to buy or sell real estate. They make commission. That is how they make their money. It's not primarily through owning real estate. It's through selling you real estate. Does that make sense? So next time you see a real estate agent say like, most millionaires are created through real estate, ask them how much real estate they own and ask them if that's the only thing they do or if they also sell you real estate. If they only do real estate, like only, they don't have another business at all, that's perfectly fine. Maybe they're worth listening to. Maybe I'm wrong. If they don't, you already know what to do. Stop listening to them. They're full of shit. They're just selling you something that benefits themselves at the cost of you. So this was a long video. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. This started off as just a rant about these books, and it kind of turned into me trying to give at least some value to people watching. Let me know if you have a book in mind that you find good and one that you find bad, by the way. I already mentioned this. Coming very soon, this book, The Millionaire Next Door, I'm going to do a video on it because I hate this book. It's awful. Garbage research, garbage conclusion, garbage data. But we'll save that for another video. But yeah, I appreciate you watching. Please do me a favor real quick before you leave. Please click the like button and please leave a comment. YouTube does not like me sometimes. They just push me down in the algorithm. They don't want you to hear this type of message. So if you could like this video, share it with someone that might get some value out of it, and leave a comment. That would truly mean a lot to me. But otherwise, hope you enjoyed the video. Peace out.